Let's return to our top story. The latest mass shooting in the United States. 6 people dead and more than 30 wounded at the 4th of July parade near Chicago. A 22-year-old has been detained, and for the very latest, we can cross live to Washington to join Arise U.S. correspondent Eric Ham. Eric, thanks so much for joining us on Newsday. Bring us up to speed with the investigation, and what more do we know about the man that has been detained?
Well, that's right. We do know now that there is a suspect in custody after that deadly shooting yesterday in Highland Park, Illinois, that left at least 6 people dead. We know more than 20 people were actually shot, many as young as 8 years old. And now the suspect in custody, his name is Richard Bobby Cremo. He's a 22-year-old white male who lives and resides in the area. We're also learning about the weapon that was used in the shooting as well. We're told that it is a high-powered rifle that was used, and we're told that this individual obtained the weapon legally. Now, he was taken into custody by law enforcement officials after a brief chase yesterday. We're told that the shooting began at around 10 a.m., a little after 10 a.m. yesterday morning, and by approximately 4 p.m. Chicago time, this individual was taken into custody by police officers after this brief chase. That's what we know so far about this individual. And also, we have been getting more accounts of actually what took place and what happened. We also know that the shooter actually perched himself on a rooftop of a building where the shooting began. In addition to that, we've had an opportunity to go through his social media posts where we see the individual has posted some very dark and disturbing and violent imagery and videos of himself singing, and of course, actually using himself in these videos where he is portrayed as an individual with an AR-15 style weapon that he used for mass shootings that played out in these videos. His social media posts have been taken down since he became a suspect in this shooting. And now what we are learning is that law enforcement officials now are actually going through the process to determine what type of charges to bring against this individual. We do suspect that there will be a number, of course, homicide charges that will be brought in this case. But as of right now, there has not been a formal charge against this individual since the shooting took place.
Wow. And Eric, the U.S. Senate, we know, recently passed the first major gun safety legislation in decades. But that would not have stopped yesterday's attack, would it? Will there be new and renewed calls for tougher controls for gun laws in the U.S.?
Well, you're right. The Senate recently passed legislation that was signed into law by President Joe Biden just recently. This is the first time that we have seen a gun legislation enacted into law in more than 30 years. Unfortunately, this new law would have done nothing to actually stop this individual from actually carrying out this latest mass shooting. One of the reasons is because even the wish list that many lawmakers would have liked to have seen in this legislation, where the gun age was raised to 22. This is a 22-year-old individual, so he likely would have been able to actually purchase a weapon. In addition to that, at least what we are finding out right now, there does not appear to be any criminality in this individual's background or hint of arrest or anything like that actually would have stopped him from being able to obtain a weapon as well. But also, I'll point out that while there has been certain and rightfully so discussions about this mass shooting, we have to remember that there were actually several mass shootings that actually took place over the 4th of July weekend in the United States. And of course, we know about another shooting that took place at a fireworks in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where actually 2 police officers were actually shot there. So a very violent weekend as the nation not only was celebrating its Independence Day, but also, as we know, the United States was just recently celebrating the passage of new gun laws. And clearly what we see in the United States, more mass shootings occurring. And already so far this year, there have been more than 300 mass shootings that have occurred so far this year. So we're talking about more than one mass shooting per day in the United States, even after the passage of gun legislation.
All right. Let's talk about people that have been shot and killed at schools, cinemas, concerts, and shopping malls. And now the 4th of July parade. Do you think people will be worried to venture out because of the spiral in gun violence?
You know, that's a really good question. And of course, after we see events like this we begin to see more discussions about doing more to curb gun violence. And that typically begins with making sure, or at least attempting to try to have less, not more guns. But because there has been a new law that has passed, I think we will see a very different conversation. And also, it's important to note that oftentimes, when we look at these mass shootings or when we look at these types of events, the demographics are always striking. In fact, if you look at what took place in the Buffalo mass shooting, we saw largely African Americans in a grocery store shopping. If you go to Uvalde, Texas, we were talking about young Latino children as young as 8 years old. Here in Highland Park, Illinois, in a community about 25 to 30 miles north of downtown Chicago, we're talking about a largely white and affluent community where the median income was about $150,000. So again, we're seeing very affluent communities, middle class, working class communities, and communities that include all types of demographics and people. And so you're right. What we're seeing now is, where is anyone safe from these types of shootings? And then, of course, when we saw what took place in Philadelphia at a fireworks display last night, where you had 2 police officers that were actually shot. And so, again, what we're seeing here is not only a rise in the number of mass shootings, but also a rise in the number of guns and weapons that continue to proliferate the country.
Arise U.S. correspondent Eric Ham, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.